All right. Good morning, good afternoon, folks. Welcome to the July edition of the Architecture Forum call. And time does fly fast. It is already the second half of the year. And so we are sort of on the home stretch now, I guess. So we have a pretty, as always, pretty packed agenda today. I have a couple of topics that I wanted to tease up, and this may be sort of a reoccurring topic, if you will. You know, headlights on key initiatives is what I called it, to give you a heads up on what's coming, what kind of work's occurring, in the community, and that will have an impact on you, or where we need your participation and input, and that sort of topic. So it may not be there every month, but definitely every quarter we'll try and see what key initiatives we can highlight. We won't go into the details of many of these initiatives, but just touch on what they are, so you have an awareness to what's going on, and if there is a willingness from any one of you to participate, contribute, we'll figure out a way to see how that can be managed, right? So that's the intent. So we have two topics to cover today. I'll probably spend, I'll say 5-10 minutes each, but definitely a total of 20 minutes across these two, because I do want Slobodan to cover the main topic of the day, which is event-driven architecture for accelerating digital transformation. I think it's based on client work that Slobodan has done, and that's what is the main topic today. So with that, if we move, I know I've taken 7 more minutes than I really wanted to. My apologies to Slobodan. So Slobodan, I don't want to take a lot of time, but I do want to take 30 seconds to introduce you. I think you reached out to me sometime last year, if I remember, maybe October, November timeframe, and said, hey, I have a topic that I want to cover. And it's taken us, the wheels were turning, but the wheels were turning slowly, and we had a number of other topics to come up. But we finally did find the time to slot you in. So I'm glad we are able to find this time, and take it away, please.
Thank you, Ray.
And also want to call out that this was the topic that was voted the most in the polls.
Thank you. Okay. My bad, I forgot to mention that. So you are very popular, Slobodan. Very well.
Well, I hope I will actually live up to that statement with this presentation. I mean, my name is Slobodan Sipcic, and I've been with IBM for about 20 years, and I've been interested in these evolutionary, hyper-scalable, event-driven architectures in the domain of a digital transformation. And I was lucky enough to implement some of these things on Toyota engagement, and that's the subject that I wanted to share with you today. So I'm going to take, if it's okay, I'm going to take sharing. So let me just see if I can share my screen. Hopefully you guys will see it. You guys see the screen?
Yeah. Yes, we can.
Okay. Given the amount of time that I have, right, I'm going actually to run relatively fast through the subjects that I believe we've been all, working on and pretty aware of, and so I'm not going to spend much time on that. So my overall goal for the presentation was really to, establish the problem and take this digital transformation domain and analyze actually what are the business drivers and challenges, and then take a step back and say what are the architectural concepts that can be applied and to address these challenges, right? And obviously the analysis of these architectural concepts, the main idea behind that was actually then to say how can we put these architectural concepts to work, and which was really the basis for defining these platform computing and EDTP, enterprise digital transformation platform, as the basis for solving these problems. There are several accelerators this EDTP is sort of uniquely, that they are uniquely available through EDTP, which is a full stack automated deployment and microservices templating that I probably want to spend most of the time, and then I will conclude with a couple of use cases from Toyota Financial Services engagement. All these things are available as a demo, and I have a list of these demos that is at the end of the presentation. And if anyone is interested, or if they have a client that is interested in demoing some of these things, we can make these demos pretty compelling. All right, so what are we trying to solve? I'm going to breeze through this because I think we all know the challenges, right? From different type of pressures that businesses are facing, so it's a question, really, transformation is really, for most of them, is really not an option. It's actually really a question of survival. Toyota is mentioning, obviously, Nokia, that used to be leader in mobile world, and now they're delivering actually hotspots and things like that. So, slippery slope for organization, right? They do not really adjust to these different type of pressures, right? They can actually go under very fast. So everything, the name of the game is evolution and being able to adjust to the pressures and business changes. The inhibitors are obviously data quality, point-to-point, couplings, and the thick pipes, multiple runtimes. The northern star for this platform, right? What is that platform? What are the attributes of the platform? Decoupling, adaptability, agility, elasticity, ability actually to bring things fast up and instantiate. I mean, the name of the game is prototyping. Technologies are changing so fast. People really want to build POCs. They want to be able to bring the environment up and down, either fast succeed or fast fail. So what are the architectural concepts that we can apply to these challenges, right? I'm again just going to breeze through them. Obviously, evolutionary architectures, right, as a sort of, based on the principle actually that change in an architecture is actually should be considered as a first principle. Evolution and events, right, and events first, an ability actually to build the systems where they communicate obviously just to the events and provide this decoupling, encapsulation, and the basis for evolutionary change. Use of patents, I mean, Ray was talking about these reusable assets, right? And ability actually digital assets. I mean, the idea behind this is actually to be able to create different, services based on the implementation of these different type of patterns, right? Either in event-driven architecture area like, event notification, event carry state, and, sourcing, CQRS, sagas, or synchronous, asynchronous retries. I mean, imagine if you have actually, problem that requires REST service with, retries and, event-driven, based on event-driven architecture, and you can simply click the button, right, and get a skeleton created for you. So that's another sort of requirements for this platform. Domain-driven design, obviously, if you really want to decouple things, you cannot decouple them by magic. You need to define some kind of bounded context, right, that actually separates, logically and from a design perspective, these different domains, right? And domain-driven design is giving you, sort of consistent and the way actually to decompose these complex domains, right? Using these, the categories of domain, subdomain, bounded context. And then if you tie microservices to the bounded context, then you actually go one step further, because now your system is decoupled, and you have also mechanism, and you have actually way for these decoupled, if you will, areas or context to communicate in consistent way. And finally, for tier architecture, I mean, the 3-tier architecture was a sort of, tied mainly with monolithic applications, right? Now with these services and with ability actually to deliver and requirements to deliver to multiple devices, ever-growing number of devices brings forward this 4-tier architecture, service aggregation, aggregation tier, and the delivery tier, and devices. So those are all, if you take all these architectural concepts, right, and you use them to solve the digital transformation problems, then you hopefully actually get to something similar to this EDTP, right? I'm going actually to, so again, the idea is actually to have some platform that obey and that is aligned with these architectural principles that then allows actually customers and clients and IBM to deliver different type of what I call service and data digital transformation solutions. So this is really platform computing. This is really not application. This is actually platform that allows you to build different applications in different areas using actually this platform and services deployed with this platform, either in a services area, in a data area, analytics area, and so on. I'm going to skip a couple of these slides, right? This is, distributed architecture, right? So in other words, how is this deployed in a distributed environment, right? Obviously, EDTP actually runs on the top of these core services, right? Which is actually Docker and Kubernetes and OpenShift. So the EDTP components are running in containers that are deployed on pods, worker nodes, services. Obviously, Kubernetes services allows you actually to sort of load balance these, the different components internally and routes to access them externally. This is a reference architecture, right? Yeah, unfortunately, I need to redraw this, obviously, because some of these are hardly readable. But the idea is actually to say that EDTP is really a sort of digital platform that is a center of, around which all these different processes and consumers and the data producers and systems are actually interacting. It has in the heart, or if you will, backbone is, the messaging, right? There are a variety of topics. Conceptually, obviously, since it's event-driven, there is event bus, event store. There are business and the integration topics, just conceptually, right? There are multiple of them. And then there are different type of services, right? Either ingress, harmonization, materialization, and integration, and then different type of services that are in the service layer, right? Start some data quality services, then I believe data delivery services, right? Then aggregation services and system services. So it's from a 4-tier perspective, right? You can think about this as a sort of system services, right? And then actually some kind of process services, and then these other auxiliary and supporting services. So the important part is that there are these what I call across services, sort of concerns, right? That these services needs to support, needs to. And let me just see if I can find that. Anyway, so but again, the point, the main point here is actually that the architectures, this reference architecture can be instantiated with a different type of technologies. The one that we use for Toyota is actually, AWS, obviously, NiFi, Ambassador at these different layers, S3, Mongo. It's a Confluent actually, messaging stack, and Elastic as observability stack, and HDFS Service Mesh and others, right? Now, how do you realize this, right? So, and this is actually where I want to point out that this is sort of, unique features really of this, if you will, platform, right? So everything is fully automated, right? And then there is this concept that is that that we have a patent pending, right? of a microservices templating, right? I apologize for this. So first, these oh man. So first, this full automated deployment, right? There are really three pipelines, right? One is actually infrastructure as a code pipeline based on Terraforms, and then the technology pipeline based obviously on Jenkins and YAML files. Different technologies, everything is extensible. And then service pipeline, right, that deploys these services and templates actually into this environment. The beauty of this is actually that you rarely start from empty VPC. And you can, in a question of 45 minutes, you can have a fully up and running production-ready environment. I mean, if you think about this just in a context of, let's say, disaster recovery, instead of running huge, actually, CapEx and running these data centers, you can actually just replicate. If you are in a certain cloud, you can just replicate EBS, block storage, and object storage, and then you can instantiate in a God forbid case of a disaster. You can just actually run instantiate platform in a different region, and you can actually reconnect that and be back in the business. This microservices templating is something that is a really interesting concept, right? We have a patent pending on this, and it's concept actually that is tied really, and idea comes from object-oriented programming, where you have really sort of classes, right? And you have constructors, right? And you can actually take and use the constructor to instantiate the object, certain number of objects from of that class. The idea is exactly the same in microservices world, right? Where we say, okay, that microservice class, if you can create microservice class, and this microservice class, an appropriate construct and appropriate constructor of that class, right? Then we would be able to instantiate actually, some instances of this class of microservices, right? Simply by using constructor, right? So it's a very powerful idea, especially if you bring that together with patterns. So if you can create actually, for a given pattern, if you can define microservices class, right? Then you can actually instantiate, and of course, everything needs to have also this notion of a hooks, right? And handlers embedded, as well as is the global schema that allows you actually really to sort of adjust this template to the specifics of your use case, right? It also allows you actually to separate duties, right? So you can have a template developers versus service developer, right? The process is actually really, you define this generic schema, then you define and develop service class, and you develop actually constructor. And constructor is exposed as a REST API, and then allows actually service developers, right, simply to run the constructor. The constructor actually clones the template service into source repository, into the the code repository, and at the same time it deploys actually, since it has the defined YAMLs, right? It deploys that service into the runtime environment, and at the end of this process, this happy guy here, right, run one service and got actually repository, and he got actually that object, that specific instance of that service running, he can actually point his whatever Postman or whatever into this actually, REST API, REST endpoint, right? And see his service up and running. And now he can go in and start changing and modifying this for the specific use case. So it's a very powerful concept, I believe, very unique concept, and hopefully we will have very soon patent, either granted or. So the question then is, obviously now, since you have mechanism, right, to create a class of services tied to a certain pattern, the question is, can you build a portfolio of patterns? And there is actually, variety of patterns that we dealt with, implemented, right? From synchronous, asynchronous with retries. So it's a complex setup. If you were ever involved in, in configurable number of retries, right? And, how do you configure, whatever is the messaging system, because this is asynchronous, right? And then there are others, right? Like event notification, event carry state. And I've been working with Bill Brown in the department that we're trying now actually to formulate this as a sort of reusable asset and install it as a reusable asset. Currently is running actually, in the area that, so we're trying to rebuild that and offer this really as a powerful asset and as something that can be used actually on multiple projects. The benefits are, I'm not going to go there.
Question, Slobodan, if I may.
Sure.
One of the items on I talked about 10 things that I can list off. One of them is microservices architecture, right? There are so many ways people do this and so many ways people screw this up. And, Kat, you have been engaged in a troubled project recently, right? And so you have some background on it. I know, Bala, you have been actively driving microservice creation at Delta recently and in other clients before that. And I'm sure a number of people who are on the call have done this. I know, Shahir, if you're on the call, you have done this too. So how many different microservices, harnesses and frameworks and generators do we have? And how can we make sure, for example, the patterns that you call out, the lessons learned from here, they may be for a specific type of deployment, that they get factored into that. I just want you guys to think about this. If it is worthwhile, we can have a brief discussion on it, but otherwise I'm teeing this up as something, the experts in this space, which is you guys, need to sort of think about and figure out how we can codify these so we don't have the repeat problems that we are seeing in multiple engagements.
Yeah,
right.
So I think Slobodan, thanks for this presentation, right? I was, as you were presenting, I was actually thinking the domain-driven design, the event storming, there is enough article we have in our garage method and all of that. I think we can, the problem is again, way back to awareness and people kind of make their own assumptions on microservices and stuff like that. I think there is opportunity for us to drive some standardization along with the work that you just talked about in the past in the first 15 minutes. I said we should meet.
I think we should, guys.
Yeah.
That was the rationale of my question in the chat, right? Because I was looking at a framework for microservices, and I keep hearing about that, but I'm sure there will be somewhere.
I mean, I am personally, right, I'm not really in favor of a lot of frameworks, right? I mean, I used and I witnessed actually a lot of frameworks that actually sort of flared and being useful, and then suddenly they become obsolete, really, so my take on all this, and I really would appreciate and would be happy to participate, right? And my take is actually that whatever we build, right, it needs to be something that is beyond just PowerPoint presentations, right? It needs to have actually something that is, can be demonstrated, something that is evolutionary, right? Something that, it's not going to be actually tied to any kind of set of technologies at a given time, right? No matter how popular they are. And I think some of the criteria for addressing and sort of, if you will, discussing these things needs to be, can this evolve in time? I mean, I was listening, your presentation about 5-year roadmap for the technologies. And I think actually the challenge is not going to be to build the framework, the roadmap at a given time, but it's going to be actually how do you evolve that framework? And I hear you, right? In terms of, sort of doing that actually, and to make it relevant as you go, how do you actually really make sure? I mean, and that's something rather than actually building any frameworks, right? I mean, my take is actually, we can discuss that, and I would really love to participate in a discussion of this sort, because I think that the name of the game is change. The name of the game is decoupling and evolution and hyperscale.
Yeah, so this is just to conclude this. I will find some time. So Ray, thanks for the suggestion. I'm thinking this is like we have this IT architecture thinking we used to do for all of our architects, right? That is changing to an extent, right? It is not about creating another framework. It is about making sure we bring this to the awareness of a lot of our people who are actually going to refer to these toolkits and all that.
Agree totally. Yep.
Yeah,
I think
bringing awareness and also, Slobodan, to your point, we can create a framework this instance, right? And then how do you keep it? How do you evolve it? How do you keep it updated with all these best practices that keep coming in? That's, I think, where we need some discussion around. But this is something that I'm willing to A, sponsor myself, and B, find the right people across IBM, right, who can help us make this a reality. Because I know we have a lot of excellent work done by some of the people I just mentioned and many of you others, right? But this is also an area that I think we have so many different points of view, and people go off and do different things that are good at that point in time, but not necessarily, taking into consideration everything. So, okay.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
You can make some closing comments and finish it up. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to make that point for the benefit of the community here.
Right. I really appreciate the opportunity actually to share some of my experience there at the end. 2 use cases, right? One use case is that geared towards the batch processing, which is obviously, each financial institution is, it's relevant to them. And how do you actually merge batch processing with real-time stream processing, right? We have granted patent. We have domain-specific language here that has been, patented. And then the second one is actually, how do you bring mainframe into this API economy, right? Through ZOS Connect and ability actually to sort of expose and unlock value in that is in mainframe data and resources.
Yeah. So I'm sure the app modernization team has done some thinking in this space.
Right,
so that's a group, right, you can connect with. Good, very good. Hey, no wonder your topic was number one, Slobodan. So even though it took us a while to get to you, I think this is teeing up a number of really critical areas and experiences that you have. Now the question is, how do we take this and address? Again, I brought up one issue that I'm close to or I'm observing, and that needs attention. There are probably a few more things that we can benefit from. And also goes back to how do you get these architectures codified in a structured way. So, we'll kick off some initiatives in this space in the second half of the year, guys, that we will really collect that library of best practices and find a way to evangelize it, educate and enable the community, and find a way to automatically, have it available for folks to consume, right? So with that, thanks again, Slobodan, and thanks for a great discussion, guys. And we will reconvene again, 4 weeks from now. Thanks much. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.